You are about to enter the courtroom of the Honorable Judge KennieJD. Does she have any movie critic experience? No. Does she have any authority? No. But they gave her a show anyways. The movies are bad. The cases are good. The rulings are final. This is in defense of...
So we may be filming this incredibly early, at least for me, in the morning. So I know I look like the most awake person right now. And it's because I am. We are semi-makeupless, very little makeup, virtually no makeup, living on a prayer and very strong coffee. But it's okay, because it makes my voice sexy for a podcast. Hello, everyone. This is In Defense of IDO, and I am your host and your judge, KennieJD. And here on this here video podcast thingy doody that we do, I look at movies that did poorly in the box office or got really bad ratings and decide whether or not they deserve them. Ayo. Today, we are ruling over the Muhammad Ali biopic from 2001 starring Will Smith, Jada Pinkett-Smith, and Jamie Foxx called Ali, appropriately so. But before we get started on that, if you would like to give us any videos, any movies that you would like to suggest, feel free to put them down in the comment section. Also, if you have any strong opinions one way or another, we'd love to hear you duke it out in the jury box. Is that what I'm gonna start calling it? The jury box. The comment section. You should leave a comment. Also, if you are watching us on YouTube, feel free to follow us here on More Butter, like us on More Butter, subscribe to More Butter. If you would like to listen to us on Spotify or anywhere else you listen to podcasts, you may, if you wanna, you can do it. Like, fine, maybe give us 5 stars or something, No pressure. This light is like seeing into the afterlife. Can we chill on that? Okay. Last week we talked about John Carter. Just watch. I don't even know where to start. Like I can't even. It's about a man who got sent to Mars and then wanted to join the Martian people, but that's a very surface level explanation of both the story of John Carter and just the experience of watching John Carter. So just watch the last episode. What can I say? It's not good, the movie. Spoiler. No, at least to me, it was just people just threw words in a bag and saw what happened afterwards, but it's fine. Okay, and so today we are talking about a movie that I remember distinctly coming out. I would have been like 6. And it was a movie that people were really excited about. That's what I remember. Like, people were like, wow, this is going to be a great biopic. Will Smith is doing an amazing job. And then it just apparently didn't, which is kind of news to me. So today we're talking about Ali 2001. And it is a biopic of Muhammad Ali, the boxer, and in many ways social. He was a personality, certainly. And this movie was directed by Michael Mann, and it was released December 25th, so Christmas 2021, distributed by Columbia Pictures. The filming began in Los Angeles on January 11, 2001, on a budget of $105 million, and shooting took place in New York, Chicago, Miami, and Mozambique. I think this movie is a very interesting one to talk about here on IDO, because in other movies, there was a big budget spent, excess of $100 million. There were A-list celebrities, but the movie itself was bad, or it just wasn't good. And so it bombed because of that. Or it just didn't get notoriety, so it bombed because of that. But interestingly enough, Will Smith got an Academy Award nomination for Best Actor and Best Supporting Actor with Jon Voight, respectively. And so it wasn't like people didn't know the movie was out and they didn't know that the movie was good, just nobody went to see it. My theory is that it was so close to 9/11, which would have happened, a few months prior, and maybe just people weren't loving weren't in the mood to go see a movie, especially one that is so staunchly critical of the American government. So I think there was just a lot of external world events that made it a less viable choice for moviegoers. But I don't think anyone didn't go because they thought the movie was bad or that the movie didn't deserve to be watched or whatever. So the project began in 1992 when producer Paul Ardagi, every week, I can't say someone's name every week, optioned the movie rights for Muhammad Ali's life story. In 1992, he visited Ali on his 50th birthday and persuaded him to allow a film to be made about his life. And so in February 2000, it was announced that Michael Mann had taken over as director following his Academy Award nomination for The Insider. With this commitment to Ali, Mann turned down the opportunity to direct early versions of The Avitator, Shooter, and Savage, and brought Eric Roth to co-write the script. Filming began in Los Angeles again on January 11th, 2001 on a budget of $105 million. And Will Smith obviously plays our main quote-unquote character, our main focus, Cassius Clay, aka Muhammad Ali. Jamie Foxx plays Drew Brown, who was like a promoter, I guess, of his. Mario Van Peebles as Malcolm X. I gotta say, as the child of old black people, it was fascinating to kind of see who was supposed to be who. Muhammad Ali is Muhammad Ali dead? Oh, he died relatively recently. He died in 2016. Anyway, so was famous is what I was getting at. Muhammad Ali, was a very, very famous person. So it's interesting to see who they get to play, like Sam Cooke and Malcolm X, and who's playing, someone played Don King, which I have words to say about Don King if he comes up in the course of I'll just say him right now. You want to have a wild ride? Read up on Don King. That's all I'm going to say. All I'm going to say, not a great dude. Moving on. So anyway, but he was a boxing promoter among many things. Anyway, opening weekend for the movie was $14 million across 2,400 plus theaters. And the sales to date are $88 million. So $56 million domestic. So the movie still hasn't broken even. Which, as we'll get to, is sad because this movie's pretty good. Just long as fuck. But other than that, it's a good movie. But due to its high production and marketing costs, the film ended up losing Columbia Pictures as much as $100 million. So let's go into fun facts. Will Smith actually signed on to play Ali in May 2000 with a salary of $20 million. He had to gain weight for the role and spent about a year learning ins and outs of Ali's life. One of the selling points of the movie was its realism of the fighting scenes, which I gotta say, agree. My only gripe as a person who likes to watch men fight in rings. I was a wrestling fan for all the right reasons, because it's just like wet, sweaty, muscular men filling on each other. Anyway, so I think that I was like, this looks like two people that are actually beating each other's asses, and I really appreciated that. I will say though, I found that the boxing scenes were too long. There's too much boxing in the boxing movie. Let's speed this shit up a little bit. Smith worked alongside boxing promoter Guy Sharp from Sharpshooter Entertainment and his lead fighter Ross Kent to get the majority of his boxing tips for the film. All of the boxers in the film are former or current world heavyweight champions caliber boxers. And the only limitation placed upon the fighters was for Charles Shefford, who plays George Foreman. He was permitted to hit Smith as hard as he could as long as he did not actually knock him out, which is a thin line, I'd imagine. So critical reviews lean largely positive, you know, in this higher 60s, for instance, on Rotten Tomatoes. Audience scores mid 60s. I do say I find it a bit low, but I also kind of get it, because the movie, in my opinion, has pacing issues. Like, the movie's like it's 2 hours and it's nearly 2 hours and 40 minutes. When you start going significantly over the 2 hour mark is when I'm like, you gotta legitimize why we're doing this. And I feel like a lot of the movie didn't do that. So, some reviews here. The film gives Ali his due by refusing to idolize him or to gloss over his failings. Brutal fight scenes and frank racial issues. Yeah, that's what the movie is. You couldn't say a little more. So anyway, but Smith packed on the pounds, unleashed some great boxing moves, and displayed a level of emotional pull that compelled audiences to see him as, quote, the greatest. It has the unsurpassable merit of its main character, Muhammad Ali, who is both one of the most serious people in the world and one of the funniest, which is very accurate. One negative review was, I respect it enormously, but it feels like an art film in search of a movie. Man recognizes the importance of Ali as an entertainer, but he is in danger of forgetting how to be one himself. With wit and athletic genius, with defiant rage and inner grace, Muhammad Ali forever changed the American landscape. Fighting all comers, Ali took on the law, conventions, the status quo, the war, as well as the fists in front of him. Ali both ignited and mirrored the conflicts of his time and ours to become one of the most admired fighters in the world. Forget now what you thought you knew. So like I was kind of alluding to before, I am from Detroit, and I remember as a child, people said at one point he was living in Detroit, if I'm not mistaken, with his family. So there is a bit of like a boxing history in general in Detroit. There's the Joe Louis Arena. Is it still? I heard they were closing. It was demolished. Oh, fuck me, I'm gonna cry. I'm sorry. Yeah, they closed Joe Louis Arena. But if you've ever been to Detroit, there's the Joe Louis Fist. Like, anyway, that makes me very sad. Anywho, but yeah, I do remember to some degree as a small child noticing that there was like a boxing lore in the area. So and my parents are older, so they were kind of like talking about it, like, yeah, all the fighters, and they would kind of talk about Muhammad Ali as this personality, but also like a great fighter, but like as a personality. And that is very true. He would not shut the fuck up, and but he was funny as hell a lot. So when I was watching this movie, I had this like thought in the back of my head. I was like, he annoying as yeah, he was annoying as fuck, but he was funny, so I got it. He was a political figure, I'd argue, just as much as he was an entertainer or a fighter, but he was a very good fighter, you know. His name wasn't his birth name, so it was a very like in the 60s, it was a very controversial thing to, one, convert to Islam, drafted to go to the Vietnam War, and he said, fuck y'all, and didn't go, almost went to jail for that. Just incredibly headstrong as a person, and that's who Muhammad Ali was. He was very loud, very boisterous, unapologetic, very flawed, but also just that's who he was. What sign was Muhammad Ali? He's giving Leo, but maybe not. Oh, Gemini. So the film begins with Cassius Clay Jr. before his championship debut against then heavyweight champion Sonny Liston. Clay taunts Liston, then dominates the early rounds of the match. And then halfway through, he complains of a burning in his eyes, implying that Liston had tried to cheat. and says he is unable to continue. However, his trainer and manager, Angelo Dundee, gets him to keep fighting. Once Clay is able to see again, he dominates the fight and Liston quits before round 7, making Clay the second youngest heavyweight champion at the time after Floyd Patterson. So, like I was alluding to before, not even alluding, I was saying, Clay at this point was a very active participant in the interworkings of the civil rights movement, especially along with Malcolm X. I was saying before, he was quite a politically inclined person, whether he wanted to be or not. I think just by proxy of personality and just, I'm gonna do what I feel and what I want. He, especially as a black man in the view of the public at that point, that makes you, ripe for criticism and ripe for scrutiny, especially with him hanging out with, public enemy number one to some degree at the time, Malcolm X. And he's invited to the home of Nation of Islam leader Elijah Muhammad, where he is given the name Muhammad Ali. And this, I remember this being like a big deal. Like, I wasn't alive at the time, but I remember like watching movies that my parents would put on that would like reference it. And it was a big deal. Like Coming to America, if you've ever seen the original Coming to America, Eddie Murphy, Arsenio Hall, and they're like African princes who fly to America to find your queen to be. A vision of perfection to be used at your discretion to quench your royal fire, completely free from infection to be used. That is not funny if you don't know that song. I just realized that, the song is super sexist because it's funny. Like, that's the point of the movie, is that the women around him would be too submissive. He wanted a woman with thought or whatever. So he goes to Queens, New York to find a queen. Anyway, there's a reference in the movie where they go to a barbershop and there's these like old black dudes arguing about whether or not to call him Muhammad Ali or Cassius Clay, because his mama called him Clay, I'm gonna call him Clay. And then he's like, he wants to be called Muhammad, like call him what he wants to be called. It was like a big thing to like do that. Anyway, really off tangent. Anyway, he becomes Muhammad Ali, and he's like a public figure with this very public name change. He is Muhammad Ali. His father, Cassius Clay Sr., disapproves, and especially because it seems he's also like thrown away the Christian faith and decided to now be a devout Muslim. He marries Sanji Roy, who is an ex-Playboy bunny, who is played by Jada Pinkett-Smith, his current wife, which is kind of funny to see. And he marries her even though she's not Muslim, but he knows that her not being Muslim is a big problem for him, which is why you wouldn't marry a woman who isn't Muslim. Like, why would she? And he's like, essentially, she'll convert. And it's like, what? What? Oh, sorry. Like, they get divorced essentially because she was the person he married. But it's just like, maybe get someone who has the same religious beliefs as you. It's like, it seems to be a very crucial part to your identity. So anyway, they break up. There's some tension between Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad. And so Ali goes to Africa and meets up with Malcolm X and later refuses to speak with him because it's in order to honor the wishes of Elijah Muhammad. As you know, Malcolm X is assassinated, and that's something that was like kind of a watershed moment. It really tore him up to see that happen. This is around when the relationship with his first wife kind of starts to fall apart, at least in this movie. I'd imagine it would have a strain to some degree on your relationship. But upon returning to America, he fights Sonny Liston a second time and knocks him out in the first round. So, the Vietnam War. He's drafted to go to the Vietnam War, and he says no. And he's stripped of his boxing license. He's considered unpatriotic. They take his passport, they take his title. And he's sentenced originally to 5 years in prison. After a 3-year hiatus, his conviction is overturned and he's like ready to get back in the ring. He's like talking to people. He was like, I never lost my championship. I want my championship back. He goes against Jerry Quarry and wins by technical knockout in 3 rounds. And so now he's looking to go and regain his heavyweight championship against Joe Frazier in the fight of the century. Frazier generally has the upper hand against Ali and wins by decision, the first loss of Ali's career. Frazier later goes on to lose the championship to George Foreman, who apparently was a boxer. I knew him as the guy that sold those grills in the early 2000s. It was like the turn of the century Y2K version of an air fryer. Everyone had one. Foreman and Ali decide to have their like big rumble in the jungle, which is what it was called, in Zaire, Africa. There, Ali meets Veronica Porsche and has an affair with her. And after reading rumors of his infidelity in the newspaper, his wife, Belinda, by the way, we skipped over this. Belinda is his second wife, who is a devout Muslim. So theoretically, you got everything you needed. You said the first chick wasn't a Muslim, so I can't be with her. You found a woman who's like, yeah, I will support you. I'm a good wife. Like we both believe the same thing. I am a Muslim, then everything should be great, right? No, he fucking cheats on her. So he cheats on her with another woman that don't look very Muslim to me. We don't know. She might be. But Belinda finds out about the affair because he wasn't very secret about it. People was like, yeah, he was with another woman, and now the rumors are out in the papers. They have not a big enough fight about that. She was disappointed. But she travels to Zaire to confront him, and he basically says that he's unsure about whether or not he loves the new woman, Veronica, but is focused solely on his upcoming title shot. So it's the fight against George Foreman. And for a good portion of the fight against Foreman, Ali leans back against the ropes, allowing Foreman to tire himself out. And then finally, he knocks out the exhausted Foreman and regains the heavyweight championship. Okie dokie, let's discuss. I have some theories as to why this movie didn't really get, I guess, the strong pull. Again, I've mentioned how I think in relation to world events, like its proximity to world events, it was maybe a bit off-putting in general to the general public of 2001, post 9/11 2001. There's also the element of, like, at this point, Will Smith being seen largely as like a bit of an action star, if you would, like an action adventure comedian star. Bad Boys, Wild Wild West, Men in Black, you know, these were his movies prior to this. So I think a lot of people kind of didn't really think him much as like a dramatic actor, you know what I mean? And to some degree I understand that. There's an element of watching this movie where it's like I'm very aware that I'm watching Will Smith, not that I'm watching a portrayal of Muhammad Ali. I don't know to what degree that's Will Smith's fault. Maybe it's just him. Like, he just can't disappear into a role because he's Will Smith. I don't know. I think the idea of seeing him as a dramatic actor is kind of distracting. I think also he had, at this point, already kind of dipped his toe in dramatic roles with The Legend of Badger Vance, which also did similarly poorly in the box office. So, and it's notable to say that his next few films were like sequels to the aforementioned Men in Black, Bad Boys, what have you, and those also did very well. He didn't really do a dramatic return to screen until 2006 when he did The Pursuit of Happiness, which actually did very well. I've only seen that movie once. It made me sad. I didn't want to keep watching like super sad movies, but I think if I return to it, I'm curious like what I would think now. And also, in fairness, there were also very competitive other movies coming out at the time too that more or less political, maybe to some degree, including Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Rings, which, Jesus Christ, as a side note, I hate Lord of the Rings, and I will say it to the day I die. I was seeing this guy, and he was really into Lord of the Rings, and I watched it What have you ever done for sorry, I'm watching fucking Lord of the Rings. It is a 4-hour movie of people walking. And I've always said it's just, I don't get it. It's just a lot of money to go walk from one location and not get there by the end of the movie. Just awful. Anyway. Okay, final verdict is innocent. The movie's innocent. I do feel like it's too long. I feel like they could have cut at least 20-30 minutes off this movie and got it around the 2-hour mark. But as far as like Will Smith's portrayal of Ali, fine. I think it's a good movie. I think I kind of disagree with the idea that it's like too much of an art film. I feel like it's just enough to let us know that we're watching film and not to the extent that it feels like we're watching parody. It feels like, you know, it's representative of big watershed moments of Ali as a person and as a political figure. I don't think it's something that would be people's favorite film in the world. I think you'll watch it once and be like, oh, that was good. And then you never watch it again. The cinematography itself, I don't feel like is any way groundbreaking. I find that some of maybe this is what people were talking about. There are lines in the film that start to feel a little over the top. And I'm not talking about Muhammad Ali, because he was. But like there were lines that people were doing, like Jamie Foxx's character had some lines that were like, wow, okay, this is supposed to be a real person. Maybe he did say those things, but this feels very like, I'm coming to your city. I'll let you know that I'm gonna make you a big star. And it's like, okay. But you know, I think it was a good movie. It's a good movie. I don't regret watching it like I have other films. So yeah, I think it deserves around that 70 percentile. Like, it's good. I don't want to watch it again. I think I'd be more interested in just a cut and dry documentary about people as opposed to, you know, biopics, but that's just me. So that's all for today, folks. If you've seen this movie, if you have any interesting historical tidbits that I haven't mentioned, I'm actually really curious what people know, because I'm not super familiar, but this did make me want to go more into the rabbit hole of like 60s politics, civil rights, and how that mixed into like entertainment. That's really, or entertainers. I'm really fascinated by that right now, because I think that was the component that I found the most interesting of Muhammad Ali's story. Like, again, him being a great boxer is amazing, but like, he was a political pariah at one point to like very conservative Christian values. He's a black, loud Muslim man who converted to Islam, who is saying, I'm not going to fight for the country. I don't care about the country. Y'all ain't did nothing for me. Why would I fight for y'all? Like, that's a wild ass thing. We say shit like that on Twitter, but that's a wild ass thing to say in like straight up 60s America. Like, that's whoa. So like, I'm fascinated by that particular intersection. Anyway, so I'll probably look more into that. But if you liked today's video, by the way, feel free to like today's video. Let me know what your rulings are. Well, you don't have any rulings. I have the gavel here. Though my decisions are final, I'm sure that it'll be a fun time to read you guys like arguing amongst yourselves about whether or not this was a good movie. And I will see you guys next time. Feel free to follow us on More Butter. Follow me on KennieJD on all the social media platforms. And I'll see you next time. Bye.